let's have a real conversation. You see these conversations popping up all over social media in regards to the masculine woman. And I always arrive at the same perspective when I see the feedback as to how these conversations are starting and the solutions, if any, are discussed in relationship to this phenomena that occurs amongst women. The first discrepancy that I have is that this is a choice. You see, in my opinion, masculinity is not something that you choose. However, amongst men and women alike, we both possess masculine energy. So we're going to start off right there. It exists within the woman, regardless, naturally. It's just not out in the forefront, but it is available within her to tap into. So I would imagine that there are situations where she may need to tap into that energy because it is available at her disposal within her body to utilize in specific circumstances. Now, even though that's the case, we want to discourage women from living in their masculine energy, from using their masculine energy as their sole identity and the place where they rely on themselves and trust themselves, because that is not their nature. It's the masculine energy that is the nature of the man. Even though he has feminine energy to tap into himself, we do not want him to live in his feminine energy. So you understand. But how does this come about? Masculine energy comes about within the woman as a attribute that we live in, that she lives in. When she does not have masculine energy accessible to her. Now, what does that mean? What that means is she may not have a relationship with her father at all. Or if she does have a relationship with her father, he may not be sufficient to supply that masculine energy to her. That means she was more of a person that may have taken care of him as opposed to him taking care of her. She does not see him as a reliable source, a structuring source, a wisdom source, a provision source, a protection source, okay? And this is a phenomena that occurs within women when they don't have these wells to tap into. See, relationships work together like yin and yang. They fit together like a puzzle. So the reason why the man represents the masculine and the female represents the feminine is because they interact interchangeably, but they serve as the missing component for the other. So a woman no longer needs to access her masculine self because her representation is now outside of herself within her man. A man no longer needs to live and doesn't need to access his feminine energy so much because his feminine energy exists outside himself within his woman. So within a woman's rage, within her pain, within the hostility she may feel towards a particular situation, her man serves as that catalyst to interpret those emotions because he is her masculine energy. In the same way that when a man is in pain, when a man is broken down, when he is devastated, she becomes his tears. She becomes his outcry. She becomes the vulnerability and softness that he may not be able to tap into. So they serve as that substitute for needing to tap into that on one's own. So when we have a conversation around the masculine woman and who she doesn't need to be and her choices, and she wants to be a man and she wants to lead, and trying to project her intention with this energy. The reality is, no woman living in her masculine energy wants to run things. No woman living in her masculine energy wants to be the leader. However, a woman in her masculine energy does want to feel safe. She does want to feel secure. And let me rephrase, because as much as I want to say feel secure and feel safe, she wants to know that safety and that security is consistent and it's guaranteed. Not a wavering security, but a consistent security. And when you're dealing with other people, sometimes these things are not readily available and consistent, because these things are contingent on the person outside of yourselves' situation, their emotional state, their mental state. So even when you're in a relationship, sometimes when the woman needs her male counterpart to be protective, his focus may be elsewhere. When she needs him to be emotionally securing of her, his focus may be elsewhere. When she needs him to quiet her thoughts, that focus may be elsewhere. And when you are constantly and consistently going through needing of that masculine energy and not having it to tap into through your male counterpart, eventually you break down and you may hit a point of anxiety, you may hit a point of desperation, you may hit a point of depression. But if you are a resourceful individual, if you are an individual that does not necessarily like to experience that form of desperation, if you will, or the craving of needing someone else to perform in order to feel complete, you may then become resourceful within yourself and learn how to foster and fulfill those needs within yourself. Now, when you take that step to fulfill those needs within yourself, you learn some things about yourself. You learn your capability. You learn your willpower. You learn your strength. You learn that it is possible to gain fulfillment without that craving, without that need, without having to play that waiting game, without having to question the consistency coming from outside of yourself. And when you learn that what you need can be guaranteed. And that's what safety and security looks like for the woman. If she wants safety and security to be guaranteed, she needs to know that when I need to be protected, the protection is there. When I need the funds are there. When I need the consolement is there. When I need to be covered, that covering is there. When I need the structure and to be focused and my emotions contained, that structure is there. So when you don't have dependable sources of masculine energy to make sure you have that, you start to develop it on your own. Now, this doesn't happen to all women, because some women don't reach deep, or they've never cultivated enough within themselves to even know that they're capable of. So they may go in the opposite direction. They may break down and fall depressed. They may become anxious. They may become lesser of a woman, a shadow of their former selves. But there is a type of woman that will get upset. She will pine for it and crave for it and cry for it and beg for it. Then eventually she'll get upset. And she'll get upset so much to say, I should be able to get this. And this will foster her ability, or create her ability, to go out and figure out how to obtain what she needs for herself. And when she learns how to do that, She then becomes capable. She then becomes no longer desperate. She then becomes confident. She then becomes completely able. And unfortunately, a symptom of that capability is not requiring it outside yourself. When you become a person that can be consistent and guarantee those things that are only derived from masculine energy on a consistent basis, a symptom of being able to do that is now when you forge an alliance with a representation or a representative of the masculine energy, a male, he may feel as though he cannot offer you things that you require because those things are now covered. You don't lean on him in those areas because those areas are now covered. And so, in that way, he now feels he's insufficient or unable to secure you. And when I say secure you, I'm not coming from the context of securing you as in making you feel safe. I mean secure you as in lock you in. And there's something about needing that other person to feel an area you cannot feel yourself that locks you in with your partner. And that's his guarantee. You see what I'm saying? In the same way that a woman needs that guarantee covering, he needs to guarantee to be needed, guaranteed to be depended on, guaranteed to be looked to. And when a woman takes that step to fill that void that could never be filled, now she doesn't look to anyone. Now she doesn't expect that covering and that delivery to come from outside herself, because now she knows she can deliver herself. And in that right, it kind of obliterates the feeling of being needed for your masculine partner now. So now it's hard for him to serve as the yin to your yang. It's hard for him to serve as the completion of you because he doesn't know where you need to be completed. And your average masculine man will quit right there. She doesn't need me. Why do I want to talk to you if you have nowhere for me to fill? And unfortunately, our men haven't been educated in the aspect of knowing that there's layers to individuals. There's multi-layers to individuals, meaning that even though she may have areas she has covered herself, it doesn't mean she doesn't suffer from deficits elsewhere within herself. And most men won't take the time to search for those areas. And then there's also the element of quieting her masculine energy. In real life, masculine energy is exhausting. When you are living in your masculine energy, this is survival mode for the woman. It is completely exhausting. And she may not know so herself, but it shows in the way she carries herself. Her irritability, her inability to get sleep, to get nourishment. She tends to be a lot more, not naggy, but a lot more, she expresses a lot more upset with the world around her. Her fuse is a lot shorter. And when she comes home from work, when she comes home from a long day, the first thing that she does is take off her armor. There are routine things that she needs to do for herself just to put herself back in her softer state, whether it be cleansing herself and taking a bath, getting some quiet time, getting some meditation time. There is a ritual almost that she needs to perform for herself just to let go of the sense of alert, the sense of high energy and protectiveness. She's needed to hold the tenseness in her muscles throughout the day. She needs to quiet all of that in order to engage back in herself. And the only place she can do that typically is at home. When she gets home, that's when she feels safe, and that's her guaranteed safety. That's her guaranteed peace. And when she gets home, she can relax, she can unwind, she can jump back into her feminine spirit So she does still exist. The feminine her does still exist. But every day when she walks out that door, she puts her armor back on. She's standoffish. She might have a little bit more of an attitude. She might be a little bit more aggressive because she's her own protection. She's her own provision. She's her own wisdom. She's her own guaranteed safety and security. So if you are a man and you happen to fall in love or fall for, become attracted to a masculine woman or somebody you perceive that has those masculine traits, let's say, she's not someone that's impossible to love. She's someone that needs to be understood. And understand that everywhere her masculine energy shows up is an area you still can take over. But that's going to come by way of showing her a different pattern, showing her a different consistency. She is masculine because in these areas, life has been inconsistent. The people who represented masculine energy were not consistent in these areas for so long that she developed these characteristics herself to make sure she was safe, to make sure she was secure, to make sure she had guaranteed safety and she would be all right no matter what and wouldn't need to depend on anyone else. But as a man, when you come into her life, you are already essentially programmed to earn everything that you get. So this should just be a challenge. This should be a challenge to show her you are consistent around provision. You are consistent around structure. You are consistent around the ability to secure her and play the masculine role and look her dead in her face from a loving place and tell her she no longer has to be her own defense, be her own protection. Allow me to stand in that doorway for you because I know you're tired and you don't have to stand there anymore. But understand, only a real masculine, divinely masculine energy can do this, not fake masculine energy. You can't arrive and be inconsistent. You can't make that promise and then be inconsistent. The minute she sees the inconsistency, the walls will go back up. You have to show consistency. You have to show that the original masculine energy still reigns supreme and that your body was built to do the things that is exhausting her to do, that is tiring her to do. Now, from the men, I can already see it. Why would I want to go through all of that when I can just have a feminine woman? Here's why. The reason why is because most men have been inconsistent at one point or another. Most men have said one thing and done another in one moment. Most men have arrived at places in their life where they have failed to hold up their end and represent themselves as the divinely masculine that they are. And in doing so, something was created. A ripple effect was started. A lot of these behaviors create masculine women. These women are not just popping up because they choose to be masculine. They are a product of their environment, and the environment that has produced them is abundant with males or men that are not exactly popping up consistent enough for her to not have to depend on herself. And so if the masculine woman is a product of males not being in their complete divine masculine, then the answer to that problem is him being in his divine masculine. This is not about fault. This is not about pointing the finger, but the same would ring true for a woman dealing with a man. If she would allow him a safe space to speak his heart and be vulnerable, she then can start to translate his feminine energy and then pour so much life into him he can stand comfortably in his masculine energy. because she is now the representation that he doesn't need to be for himself. We will never solve the masculine energy issue until we understand where it comes from and really speak to the source of what needs to be corrected to create a change. What a lot of people don't realize is a lot of these women that suffer from these traits have not been anywhere near a truly divinely masculine man. And in doing so, in presenting this to her, she will soften. Granted, with each woman, it will take time, and that time frame depends on that particular woman. But a man that is in his divinely masculine will never change his position regardless of her response to his energy, because he knows who he is. His identity has already been solidified, so there's no need to change his approach to the situation. Even if you cross paths with a woman who doesn't know who she is, she doesn't respect herself, it is you and your divine masculine that teaches her how she needs to be treated according to how you deliver the standard under which you hold yourself to. You can then create a world for her where her expectation for herself is substantially higher than what it was before she met you, simply by the presentation you expose her to, the demonstration of consistency that she experiences when being around you. Men, you guys are powerful and capable of a lot. And I'm sorry, but the shaming and the guilt trips just don't work when it comes to being effective, when it comes to genuinely trying to change the source of a thing. Because women are still emotional creatures, even the masculine ones. And deep down and underneath all of that muck lies somebody who wants to be understood. And if you were to practice phrases like, I know you can handle this on your own, but let me do this for you. You shouldn't have to do it. I know you can do this, but you shouldn't have to. I know you're capable, but that's what I'm here for. And being consistent in those areas so she can understand you don't have to play that role anymore. Instead of calling her masculine, telling her what she isn't, telling her who she isn't, and what she isn't capable of. All that does is tap into ego and pride and put her mind frame in a position to want to prove a point. Because in her mind, she has been without masculine energy coming from a man for a long time, and she has created her world and she is happy with the world she has created. So trying to argue with her existence that says she is incapable of producing a good life without a man is not really what you're trying to achieve. What you're trying to achieve is knowing that this woman can transition into being soft in the presence of the divinely masculine. And that can only really take place when the divine masculine is consistent in his energy, not in his ability to make her feel small. Listen. Understanding is always the key when it comes to these conversations, and that will never change. That will never change. So understand where she comes from, decide if that woman is worthy, and then fill the void and give her patience, deliver with love, and continue to be the man that you hold yourself to within your own standard without expecting her to be anything as a result of who you are. But lead by example and be that leader, be that king, be the individual that radiates so much good energy she can't help but shift. See, we know that there are men that are masculine in the world today, but the way that we are trying to handle these situations sounds much more like a wrestling match. And understand that when you're trying to create feminine energy, you don't handle that person like they're masculine. You handle them like they're feminine. You treat them softly. And that is where your feminine energy comes into play. Even though you are strong and you're well structured and you are within your divinely masculine self, when you present yourself to her, there is a bit of feminine energy that's there to essentially build the bridge between you and her. So she knows she's understood, so she knows that she's heard. And then you introduce her to the aspect of you that she no longer needs to be or pretend to be anymore. Understanding is always the best policy here. But in these conversations today, we'd rather bash and talk trash and minimize her accomplishments, considering what she has been through up until this point. And that doesn't work. It just creates defensiveness. We're trying to solve the problem. We're trying to create more feminine women. And you create that space, that safe space, by acknowledging how far she's come, by saying, I hate that you've been exposed to such experiences and such dishonest people and such inconsistent people, but you don't have to fight anymore. I'm here. I got you. And yes, it will take some time, but that's why you have to find the woman that you're willing to do that for, that you're willing to be consistent for. And for some of you all, a woman with that kind of energy may not be right for you, but don't make her wrong because your preference is something different. Just understand your preference is something different and go after what you're after. Because there are plenty of people in this world, there are plenty of men in this world that do not shy away from a woman who has built herself up from nothing. And they can admire where she's come from and find it an honor to take all of that weight off, to take all of that struggle off, to take all of that burden off, and watch her melt down to butter. Understand being able to do that for a woman locks her in as well, especially if she's never known someone who can do it for her before. That will lock her in for a lifetime because that's a love she has never known. Peace.